guys, Taylor Doll here with another episode of Making Monsters. Bears coming off a win against the Rams. It was a fun one. It felt like Shane Waldron did some fun things. The offense felt like it was clicking a little bit more. There were still some moments that you got a little frustrated, but still there were a lot of good things that you could take out of this game. And I think that a big one that we're all talking about is the continuation of development of Caleb Williams. And I heard Chase Daniel make a comment in his breakdown saying that Caleb Williams was a game manager in this game, and he's never seen Caleb Williams be a game manager at USC. And to me, that is one of the most positive things you can say, because Caleb Williams can do all of the crazy things. Caleb Williams can make the crazy throws down the field and can spin and turn out of all of this madness, and that can do these weird little trick plays to DeAndre Swift or Khalil Herbert or whoever, right over the offensive linemen's heads. But I think that it's fun to see him be able to kind of navigate this game and make it his offense. And I do think we're going to continue seeing that. But I do also want to talk about my monster of the week, which I'm working on some fun stuff. I have already done an episode of Jaquan Brisker, but I feel like we have to keep talking about this guy right now. And so I am working on some more stuff to maybe get some more insight on Jaquan Brisker, because everybody knows he's been one of my favorite. I love his personality. People get annoyed by him on Twitter. I think he's fantastic. He's confident. I love the confidence. I love that he chirps back at people. I love all of those things. But Jaquan Brisker has been just so much fun to kind of follow along with this season. So just a few numbers from this last week. He had 12 tackles, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss, and an interception in this last week game. And in coverage this season on 128 snaps, he's only allowed 54 yards. He has an interception on that, and the passer rating is a 54.2 when they're receiving obviously when Jaquan Brisker is targeted. I love it. I think that this genius move of bringing Kevin Byard in here and having this free-flowing, more open secondary when it comes to especially those safeties, rather than like, here's your free safety, here's your strong safety, I think it's helped a lot. And I think you can already tell of that, because we're seeing this resurgence of Jaquan Brisker of what we saw year one. He's all over the place, getting to the quarterback, getting interceptions, getting his hands on the balls constantly. And that's just something you saw a lot his rookie season, and maybe it fizzled out a little last year, and it feels like it's coming back, and I'm really excited about that. But so that's my Making Monsters. That's a little recap of kind of the Rams-Bears game, which, like I said, I think we saw a lot of positives out of that. I think some people, Shane Waldron, there's probably a couple plays he'd like to take back. We saw a DeAndre Swift day, and that's what I actually put a poll up on my Twitter this week, because there were so many people that I think played well. Like Javon Dexter played really well. Torrey Taylor played really well. Jaquan Brisker played really well. And DeAndre Swift went off. So it was honestly really hard for me to choose a monster this week. So I let everyone vote, and the voters did vote Jaquan Brisker. But I mean, Javon Dexter just keeps getting better. The way that he creates just kind of like this madness in the middle, and the way he's able to get to this quarterback right now is this. The big question mark we had this whole offseason was that pass rush, and how you were going to be able to create that and get these consistent pressures, and could it all be Montez Sweat? And honestly, it's been a pleasant surprise with what Javon Dexter's been able to do, and even Darrell Taylor's been able to do when it comes to that pass rush. Andrew Billings is just a beast too up front. I feel like we could probably put him in the vote every week, because he's always just making plays up there on the defensive line. But I also, obviously, we're going to be previewing the Bears-Panthers game. This is an interesting game I feel like to most people outside of Chicago and Carolina. It's like, okay, honestly, who really cares about this game? But to Bears-Panthers game, that means a lot. It's the big trade, the Ryan Poles trade, having their former wide receiver. Honestly, I just noticed Eddie Pinheiro as their kicker over there. Not that that's a whole lot, but another thing is Andy Dalton. I mean, Andy Dalton was here and kind of just like ruined our lives in Chicago. And then now he's had this couple games that he has in Carolina. And the last thing you want is to have Andy Dalton come in and run all over you and throw all over you and do all this crazy stuff and beat you at home. That'd be honestly a nightmare. I will be there this weekend, so I'm super excited, but I'm also feel like I'm going to be so nervous, because it's just one of those games that you really feel like you should win. And if you don't, it's going to be very, very disappointing, especially sitting at 2-2 and being able to get above 500 for the first time in a very long time. But anyway, so we're going to be talking about, obviously, some of the changes that they had this offseason, what looks like a much improved offensive line, and then what looks like some offensive weapons who are surprising some people. Chuba Hubbard, and then obviously Deontay Johnson. Both of them have really had a resurgence this year. And so it's been really fun to watch them. But Andy Dalton, I think, is the bigger storyline. What can he do with that offense? Because when he was in Chicago, he could do virtually nothing. Their defense is a major question mark. We'll talk to Demetri Ravanos. He's joining me. He hosts a podcast called This Team is Killing Us. It's a Panthers-based podcast. So if that tells you anything, that shows you how they felt for a while now, and probably since the strong Cam Newton days. But it will be interesting to kind of see how all of this plays out this weekend. And it's a very winnable game. And especially with the progress you've seen of the offense and the way the defense is playing. Come on, this defense should stop Andy Dalton and Deontay Johnson and Chuba Hubbard. That shouldn't be an issue. But we will see. Anyways, let's go ahead. We're going to take a quick little break, and then we're going to go and we're going to play this. We're going to get to this interview with Demetri Ravanos, talk about this Bears-Panthers game that is going to be happening this weekend. All right, guys. So we have some more Underdog fantasy stuff. It's that greatest time of year. Like I've said, football is back and it's here until February. Over 1 million fans across 33 states got in the game last year by making picks on Underdog. So now I'd say it's your turn. I've given you a couple things the last couple of weeks. I think we need some DJ Moore love this week. That's where I'm going. So you can do simple stuff. You could do higher or lower. That's the way I like to go. It makes it, you don't have to analyze too much. Right now on Underdog Fantasy, they have 4.5 receptions, higher or lower for DJ Moore, 53.5 receiving yards, higher or lower for DJ Moore, and 21.5 longest reception, higher or lower for DJ Moore. I think if you want to look at Rome Odunze too, that could be a fun one. We saw Rome go off a couple weeks ago. I think you want to see him back in this offense. They only have 2.5 receptions for Rome for this game. So you can bet on higher for that one if you'd like to, or you can do 33.5 receiving yards, higher or lower on that. So a lot of ways you can go this week when it comes to some of those Bears higher or lower numbers and what you're confident on this weekend as they do face the Panthers. But just remember, if you're making picks on Underdog, it's straightforward and signing up is even easier. Just head over to the Underdog, simple to use mobile app or underdogfantasy.com. Sign up with promo code CITY, that's CITY, and Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code CITY to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. You must be 18 and up, 19 and up in Alabama and New England, 19 and up in Colorado for some games, 21 in Maryland and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. And are you concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit 1-800-NCPGambling.org. If you're in Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. That's 1-800-639-8783 or text NEXT STEP to 53342. If you're in New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. That's underdogfantasy.com. All right, everybody, let's continue on our Making Monsters preview. We are set to now play the Panthers, and I feel like to the outside world, this probably doesn't mean a whole lot to the rest of the NFL. But to Bears and Panthers fans, it does have a little extra something. So we'll get into that side of it, obviously. But Demetri Ravanos, one of my favorite humans in the entire world. So I appreciate you for hopping on. You host, you guys have a podcast with, it's called, I love it, This Team is Killing Us. And it's a Panthers podcast, kind of started around Bryce Young. And it was a Bryce Young podcast, now has pivoted to just being a full-on Panthers podcast. So again, thanks for joining me. And thanks for the entertainment of the name of that podcast.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Look, so it started out as Young Gun, and Lauren Brownlow, my partner, is one of my closest friends. She loves the Panthers. Look, where is it? There is my degree from the University of Alabama. That is the only reason that I started following the Carolina Panthers, and now I feel like it was a real mistake. But occasionally, to show people I am not giving up hope, I still wear my hat for Bryce. It says my sweet tiny prince upon occasion.
I love it. So what are you a fan of next year, wherever Jalen Milroe goes?
Yeah, listen, who's to say it's not going to be the Panthers, right?
Yeah.
Like, this could work out perfectly.
Honestly, you wouldn't even have to pivot teams. You just pivot players. Right. Fun. All right. As I was mentioning at the top of that, Demetri, the storyline between the Bears and Panthers has obviously grown. It starts with the trade that Ryan Poles got. Panthers got Bryce Young. The Bears got DJ Moore,
Everything else.
Tyreek Stevenson, Caleb Williams, another pick next year. Tell us a little bit about the mindset of Panthers fans. Number one, you and I kind of went back and forth when we were talking about DJ Moore and how I told you we were getting people in our mentions saying DJ Moore isn't a number one wide receiver. You were like, that's absolutely insane. Like insane. No way people were saying that. So I kept sending you stuff. I was like, I promise you.
I'm telling the audience, I absolutely did not believe Taylor for a second. And Taylor said earlier, I'm one of her favorite humans. The feeling is mutual. Like we are very good friends. So I straight up did not want to call my friend a liar, but like I was confident she was a liar. And the onslaught of tweets from my Panthers brethren has not stopped. I always understood, right? Like if you don't have the quarterback, what's the point of not maximizing the value of the receiver? Obviously that was one of the big problems for Bryce last year. He had nobody that could get open and they couldn't keep him upright. I think that Panthers fans are of one of two minds. Either they feel fleeced by the Bears because Bryce Young just isn't the dude that we were hoping he was going to be. And then there are other people, and Lauren falls into this camp, that it's not that they're mad about Bryce Young. It's that it's hard not to look back at the trade. And even if Bryce had turned out to be, the next Patrick Mahomes, that's an awful lot to give up on a hope and a prayer. And, I know the Panthers and Bears trade is what we're talking about here, but you have to think back 3 years to really get an idea of just how much the Panthers have given up to get their quarterback. I mean, they traded for Sam Darnold. They traded for Baker Mayfield. Like, just nothing has gone right in the pursuit of a quarterback.
Yeah, and those two right now are having very good seasons to start off. So that's probably a little extra dagger in the Panthers world. But I think that when you look at it too, and they got rid of Christian McCaffrey. And granted, I know maybe sometimes there's probably some fans that are like, he was always injured. And then now look, they're dealing with it again. So you try and find the wins.
I'm 1,000% one of them.
Believe me. I mean, I argue all the time, like Roquan Smith was one of the best linebackers the Bears have had, obviously. And there's a long history of that. I argue that it was the right choice just because it doesn't always connect everything and check every box. It still, for us, ended up working out. You got a Tremaine Edmonds, a Javon Dexter, and a TJ Edwards out of the trade that you got for Roquan. So to me, sometimes you have to weigh stuff out. But let's look at the team beyond Bryce Young because he's not playing. He's not playing right now. Let's go there. Actually, let's start there because he was benched. And I think that there are two sides of this. Some people say, what are they doing? Is this going to backtrack his development? Is this going to shoot his confidence, take a shot to his confidence? Some people were saying, look, he wasn't playing well. And sometimes we've seen in history, it benefits guys to be able to sit. What is the mindset, do you think, the majority over there in Carolina?
I think that it is fair to say the fact that the offense looks so much better with Andy Dalton, I think the fan base has kind of come to terms with, hey, here was just another swing at the whatever you want to call it, the quarterback pitches that just did not work out, right? Like I hate it. Like I said, I'm a Bryce guy. I wish it was going to work out, but I think when you see what Andy Dalton has done, and B, the fact that, like you mentioned Sam Darnold earlier, I think that I'm still not completely sold that Sam is back, so to speak. But what he's doing right now in Minnesota, it was never going to happen in New York, right? Like, I think it's very possible Bryce is Sam Darnold, just smart enough not to say out loud what the problem is the way Sam Darnold did. And I just don't think it's going to happen for him here in Carolina. I think if he is ever, and I do think he's capable of being a serviceable backup in this league, but if that's going to happen, it's not going to happen in this environment. It sure as hell is not going to happen with the way Dave Tepper has sort of treated him from the day he arrived in Charlotte. It was just too much to expect with that roster. And look, he's not the same dude he was at Alabama. Part of that is about his own struggles, but the other part of it too is, and I don't know how much you know about high school football, but Mater Dei, the school in California that he came from, dude, that's the Alabama of high school football. This is probably the first time he has ever not had the best offensive lineman on whatever level of football it is he's playing I just think he's broken right now. And so I think that the hope, and look, I'm speaking for myself, the hope is that they don't rush into feeling like they've got to find that franchise quarterback again. Dave Canales has a good track record of reviving guys as quarterbacks. If Andy Dalton is a 2-year Band-Aid until, maybe it's Nico Iamaleava at Tennessee, maybe it's Arch Manning at Texas, whoever it is that they finally feel great about, I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah, and believe me, we know about the Band-Aids. That's one thing we've done a lot here in Chicago. We know the Band-Aids. And obviously we're hoping we'll get into the Caleb Williams topic a little bit later. But speaking of Andy Dalton, I mean, there's no denying Andy Dalton's played better. There's no denying that it felt like it's brought a little bit of energy to the team as a whole. And sometimes that helps. Sometimes just having that kind of reset, refresh of the quarterback, even if it's not an elite quarterback, it's just someone bringing a little bit of veteran leadership into the room helps. So what have you seen from Andy Dalton? Do you see this being able to be a thing to hold out through the year, or do you think things will settle back down to earth a little bit?
I think that probably what we saw against the Bengals last week, where the team looked good, but they weren't really a threat in that game. I mean, I told Lauren this week that it's disappointing to be playing a team with no wins, and after they go up just by 7, like you're convinced your team is lost. But
this is it.
Yeah, but I mean, look, literally from snap one in week 1 against the Saints, it looked like that game was over, that the team had lost. So this is progress. God, I mean, look, I know you guys have lived that life before on offense, so you understand it. I think that the best you can hope for with Andy Dalton is that the offense keeps looking good, because they did invest a lot of money in the offensive line. I think they got lucky in some instances with what they did with the receivers, but they upgraded the receivers. And that's one of the dings against Bryce, right? Is, I was among the people that wondered, did we sort of get fleeced into what Dave Canales' strengths are? And then you see an experienced NFL quarterback in that offense, and you realize, oh, no, it just may not be happening for Bryce here. Like, this is what the offense is supposed to look like.
Yeah. Canales is someone that I think a lot of people have maybe shifted opinion the last couple of weeks. And
I'll tell you, one of the ways that I've shifted opinion on him is, and this is going back from when he got hired, right? We look at what his track record is with quarterbacks in the NFL. And most recently, obviously, Baker Mayfield, his first NFL quarterback, was Russell Wilson. And what do those guys have in common with Bryce? They're all 5'10". And I do think that is what the Panthers were looking at, was his success with shorter quarterbacks. I think the Panthers stumbled into the right guy for the wrong reason, because look at what else he's done. Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield in Tampa. He's also a really good reviver of quarterbacks, and that might be what they need, at least until they are ready to actually go find that franchise guy.
Yeah, there was a lot of people talking about, because obviously Shane Waldron came to Chicago, and a lot of people were connecting Shane Waldron to some of the success of Geno Smith, the revival of Geno Smith, and then kind of obviously what he was able to do with the LA Rams too. But I do think a lot of it was Canales, and like just his, and you look back, and I've never thought about that all those quarterbacks were 5'10". That's really interesting. So he has a weird niche with 5'10" quarterbacks and figuring out how to get them going. But what about the run game? Chuba Hubbard, I feel like he has had back-to-back 100-yard games or over 100-yard games. And I feel like he's one
first time for Panthers running back in 3 years, by the way.
Really? Wow.
To have back-to-back.
Okay. I remember obviously when Christian McCaffrey left, and immediately it kind of, people were like, it's okay. Chuba Hubbard, he'll be fine. And you felt like you had a little bit of glimpse that he could be good, and then it fell off. But now it does feel like it's back. What changed in the run game for them this last couple weeks? In addition to, we already talked about Andy Dalton, but the run game, what got that going the last couple weeks, do you think?
So I think it's a few things. Number one, when your opponent does not respect the pass at all, they can absolutely key in on stopping the run. But I think this is a longer path to this point. I think you literally, Taylor, have to go back to week 1 of last season to really get the story of what has gone right. Basically, they made Chuba the man as opposed to using him as the spellback to Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders was a little more banged up than he let people know coming into last season, and that stunted the run game. The other part of it is, as the team went out and spent money this year, some of us, or this past offseason, some of us were scratching our heads with how much they invested in the interior of the line as opposed to kind of upgrade. I mean, look, I'm out on Ike Ekwonu as the left tackle.
Really?
I know some people hold out hope he can turn it around, and certainly he's looked better this year. I will totally give him that. But where the Panthers spent all their money was on the guard position, and they kicked Austin Corbett inside to center. That's made a big difference because Chuba is, he kind of reminds me of Doug Martin, the old Tampa Bay Buccaneers running back, where he is just thick, man. He's just hard to bring down. And the thing that is kind of hanging over Chuba's head, and I don't think this is lost on him, is, whenever they're ready to get Jonathan Brooks back in the swing of things, like there's no way Chuba stays the A back. It's going to become Jonathan Brooks' job. Like you didn't draft that guy to make him the number 2. I think it'll happen over time, but I think Chuba is, whether it is he's playing to keep his spot in the rotation or whether he's playing because next year he is going to want to find a better situation, I think Chuba is motivated by the fact that Jonathan Brooks will be back soon.
I honestly, Demetri, I kind of like this revival of the running backs we've seen this year. And I feel like we can talk about, the 2 high safeties and how that's eliminating some of these explosive plays and all of that. But I do think it's forcing teams to be more creative when it comes to the run game. That's why teams like the Lions, who have a Jahmyr Gibbs and a David Montgomery, are able to be so successful because they can do so many different things. It's the Bears, it's taken a little bit. It's taken about 4 weeks to get DeAndre Swift going. We'll see if that's a continuing or if last week was a fluke. But I think it's exciting to see this kind of revival of the running backs. It's fun for me.
Yeah, it's interesting too, right? And David Montgomery is a really good example. Obviously, Saquon Barkley in Philly would be another good example of this. Those are dudes that have long passed the well-understood expiration date of 28 or 29 years old. Or I guess in Saquon's case, he is right up on it, but the injury history is what it is. And they are still going. And part of it is, I think, to your point, like we talk about the 2 high safeties and how much nickel has become a base package now, not just in NFL, well, probably in the NFL, because it's dime is the base package in college at this point. But the amount of smaller dudes on the field, I know it's like stupid common sense stuff, but I don't think it's wrong. I think that when you are not having to run through a box of 7 or 8 guys, you probably can go a little bit longer. You probably are not taking the sort of like the degradation of your body is not happening as quickly.
Yeah, I just did actually like my gym of the week for 1010XL, and it was Ashton Genty from Boise State, who's insane to watch right now.
Amazing. Yeah.
If anybody listening has not seen him, go watch him. The blue field hurts my eyes, but he's incredible. And so that's just.
The NCAA changed a rule a couple of years ago. It used to be that Boise State could not wear all blue if they were at home, like they could, and now that's out the window. And I'm the same way.
It's like I just can't look at the screen. I know. I was watching it the other day, and I'm like, "Where did he go? I can't.
Yeah,
I don't know where he went." Let's talk a little bit. You mentioned that receiving core. Obviously, Deontay Johnson. I feel like he's another player who has kind of found himself in Carolina, and then so Xavier. I have always said Leggett, but I feel like when he says it, he says Leggett, but his accent's crazy, so I don't know. But he's one of my favorite people to. I feel like I want to cover him so badly.
Yeah, he's great, and I got to know him, not know him personally, but know him, his game, because I do some work occasionally for a radio network down in South Carolina. He never corrected anyone in when he was playing at South Carolina, so we all said Leggett. But turns out it's Leggett is how he is said. Yeah. His family pronounces it. Dude, he's awesome. I mean, he will put his body on the line to throw a block in the backfield. It was like, some of the fact that it took him a while to get going this season is because he's like the one reliable blocker not on the line that could buy Bryce a little bit of time before they made that change. Look, he's a rookie. He still has the dropsy sometimes, unfortunately. Yeah. But I think when you see him, when he is at his very best, he had this great layout on the sideline catch against the Bengals. And that's the highlight stuff. But where he's at his very best is real simple. You throw him a slant pattern about 8 to 10 yards down the field and just let him go. Like that's where he looks his absolute best. Look, they needed to do something to upgrade over Adam Thielen being your ex wide receiver, which was the case last year.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted that to be Jonathan Mingo, who was a rookie last season. Mingo, he can run fast or he can catch the ball. He cannot do both at the same time. And if he does catch the ball,
something a receiver probably needs.
Yeah. And here's the other thing. When he does catch the ball, there's no guarantee he's hanging on to it. He has been, I want to say a roller coaster, but if it is just straight down the whole time, I don't know that that's a roller coaster. Really, it's been hard to watch because I thought he and Bryce could make like a great team that came in and developed together. But at this point, look, Deontay Johnson absolutely has grabbed that X slot and he is not letting it go. Thielen has proven that he was more than just the best of a bad bunch last year, and I have high hopes for Ligon. I think they do have three really good, like true wide receivers. Tommy Trimble has stepped up as the tight end this year, and then everybody still has really high hopes for the other two rookies. Jonathan Brooks, when he comes back, who is a receiving running back, a pass catching running back, and Jatavian Sanders. Like, you don't draft that dude if the plan is not eventually to make him the number one tight end.
Yeah, I think that a couple things. So number one, it just shows the Southern gentleman out of Xavier to just let everybody say his name forever. But I noticed one video that the Panthers did, which anytime I see a video of him, I stop and watch it because he's fantastic. But one of the videos, he said his name and I'm like, did he just say Lee?
Right.
Like, that is not what we've been saying.
Right. But did you see the video of him? Somebody literally first day of training camp gave him a leather cowboy hat with the Gamecocks logo sewed in on one side and the Panthers logo sewed in on the other. And he would wear it to the field every day for training camp after that. Like he's fantastic. He seems like a sweetheart, right?
Yes. I want to be friends with him. We also, though, Demetri, when you're talking about the roller coaster that just only goes down, we also have one of those. His name's Velus Jones Jr., who has now been inactive for a couple of weeks. So we know exactly how you feel about that because it was the same situation where it was like, if the rare chance he did catch the ball, it was probably at some point going to pop out when he's running. And you're just like, I don't know. There was one play that now he's been inactive for a couple of weeks. I don't know how it even happens. I was like, it's the most unlucky thing I've ever seen because he muffed a kick return. As he drops it, he like kind of runs to get it, ends up punting the ball straight into the other guy's hands. And I was like, this is just not normal stuff. But we haven't seen Velus in a couple weeks now. But you mentioned the offensive line. From last year to this year, how much improved would you say they are in Carolina?
Listen, this last week, there was no offensive line across the NFL that gave up less pressure than the Carolina Panthers. And that is a full 180-degree turn from what we saw last year. The addition of the two guards was so big. And I will be the first to admit I was worried about the fact that they went out and added two new guards and just acted like they were fine with the center position. I mean, I was screaming at my TV on draft night when they go get Brooks instead of Zach Frazier, the center out of West Virginia, because I thought it's what they needed. But it has worked out. Like, as much as I say I'm out on Ike Ekwonu, I cannot deny that he is better from last year. But also, I can't get out of my head, like, there are times where it just doesn't look like he knows what his assignment is. And I talked to Ross Tucker from CBS about this last year. And he said that he can look at, because he played all five positions across the offensive line in the NFL, he can look at a dude and tell when he has been overcoached. And I think you can say the same thing about a lot of dudes that have been in Carolina over the last 4 or 5 years. Like, think about how many different coaching staffs were in that dude's ear over the first 2 years of his career. That's got to affect you. But look, the improvement has been there. I don't know that I would say that the Panthers feel like they have their five for the foreseeable future, but the middle of the offensive line is locked down. I think you will have to carry Taylor Moton out of Charlotte in a body bag. Like, I don't think he's leaving of his own accord. And so the question becomes, like, what is the move to make with left tackle, or is there a move? Like, do we just wait and see how much Icky improves throughout the season?
Yeah, we have strong offensive line questions, and it's weird because all the PFF numbers come out and it doesn't add up. And I'm like, that's when, to me, like, you have to take the analytics and match it with actually watching the football game, because there's just some moments where I'm like, that's just no way. Like, no way.
That's last year going into last season, right? Bryce's rookie year, the 2023 season. The Panthers were, by those PFF numbers, they were a top 10 offensive line in the NFL, and that is absolutely not what we saw.
No way. Yeah. Like, have you watched the game? Like, it is. Yeah, I want to get to. I know you have to take your son to practice, so I want to get through a few of these last ones.
Yeah. I got about 15 minutes.
Okay, perfect. So the defense let's switch over to the defensive side of the ball. I feel like a lot of people, they've allowed 32 points on average so far this season. When you talk Jadeveon Clowney, J.C. Horn, probably the two most recognizable names for people that aren't obviously covering the team or watching the team consistently. But tell us more about the defense, what to expect, what the Bears can expect from this Panthers defense.
Well, I would love to tell you that if we knew what to expect from this Panthers defense, because Shaq Thompson is out for the year. Josie Jewell is out for the next 4 games. DJ Wanham, who was another free agent acquisition, we thought would be back this week. That is not happening. Like, the frustrating thing about this Panthers defense, and really this is about the way you understand why the team made the decision that they did before they knew what was going to be Bryce's fate. You understand why, given the lack of cap space and resources, you understand why if they have to pick one side of the ball, it's going to be offense, right? But they trade away Brian Burns last year. They let Frankie Louvu walk. Yeah. Derek Brown gets hurt and is gone for the entirety of the season. Like, this is a faceless defense for the most part. J.C. Horn has absolutely surprised me, because going back to what we talked about with Christian McCaffrey, he just hasn't been able to stay on the field. Yeah. But what I have been impressed by is each of these last 3 weeks, it has been someone different stepping up to become a playmaker in the secondary. So I think the secondary is better than they look. If I am the Bears, though, I'm looking at this week as an opportunity to either control the clock and keep the ball on the ground, or build Caleb Williams up through those 8 to 10 yard slants and let the receivers do the work, because that is where the Panthers, I think, have the most problem right now, is in the box.
And it's interesting because I truly don't mind that. There was we're talking about analytics, another chart that came out talking about the teams with the least amount of big plays in the NFL so far. Bears were dead last in that. I personally don't mind that, because the Bears relied so much on those big, crazy hero plays from Justin Fields for the last few years. Like, if he wasn't throwing a 41-yard bomb or spinning out of 4 sacks and then getting 20 yards on the ground, then the Bears weren't getting in the red zone. And now we are able to connect on some of those midfield. I've never seen so many midfield passes in 10, 15 years, because we haven't had quarterbacks that could do it. It was always Justin was very strong on the left side of the field, so it was very obvious where he was going with the ball. Caleb loves the center of the field. Maybe some of that is a guy like Keenan Allen and Cole Kmet, what they could do up in the middle. But it is interesting when you see, when you're talking about that, him taking advantage of that. I'm fine with that. I'm fine of being able to take those easy plays until Caleb fully is able to unleash.
And I think that if I were in your shoes, Taylor, I would want Caleb to sort of have a governor on him this season. Now, I am not somebody that I'm not one of those, idiots that thinks him painting his nails or anything like that is the reason he's not X, Y, or Z. That's stupid, right? The reason that I'm concerned about Caleb Williams at the NFL level is Lincoln Riley's offense is not real life, right? So you kind of want to make sure the dude is very comfortable letting other people make the plays and not feeling like he has to play that hero ball all the time. If I were you, I'd be right there with you. I'm sure it gets frustrating sometimes that they cannot or do not move the ball in big chunks when it would really turn the fortunes of a game. But I do think this is the way you build up a guy like Caleb Williams in his rookie season.
Yeah, and I agree, because when I talk to people all offseason about Caleb, that's was a lot of the concern, is that offense was just so wild and kooky. Like, you can't do that in the NFL. So is he going to be able to be this guy that can be, have the pocket presence and be able to stand there and be, even Chase Daniel did the breakdown this last week, and he was like, I've never once saw Caleb Williams be a game manager at USC, and he was a game manager versus the Rams. And that's
I would tell you to go back and watch the year he won the Heisman, 2022. It was actually a game they lost, was the Pac-12 championship game against Utah. And you could really see the inability to, or I guess maybe unwillingness probably is more accurate, to just sort of slow it down and take what the defense gives you is what took USC out of that game. Like, if Caleb can learn that side and be comfortable with that side of quarterbacking, it's going to be better for the Bears in the long run.
Yeah, I agree. And that's what obviously, like, we're hoping that, because he can do the crazy wild spins and weird throws where he flicks it in the middle of the field and does all these things, but you do want to see him be able to just kind of work within a scheme and use his weapons, right, like you said. And that was honestly one of my favorite things, like, from the combine. He made a comment and they were like asking about him running, and he was like, I don't want to run. Like, I want to use my wide receivers. And he didn't say it, but it was kind of insinuating, but I had to at USC. Like, I had to be that guy, And so we've seen develop each game. He's gotten better. Each game you've seen a little bit different too. Like, he had threw the ball 52 times 2 weeks ago, and then threw the ball 23 times this last week. And both ended up being like, you felt like he was comfortable doing either, but you don't want your rookie quarterback throwing 52 times. That's just kind of weird to me. But defensively, when you're talking about the Panthers, and we're talking about kind of the life Andy Dalton has brought into the offense and this improved offensive line, it's going against a defense that has been really good. They've only allowed over 20 points once in the last 10 games. They have 10 sacks, 5 interceptions on the season so far. What do you think the Panthers are looking at when it comes to this defense? Are they worried about that pass rush up front at all? Do you think they're more worried about that secondary with guys like Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon and Brisker?
Okay, so this is not a comment on the Bears at all. I don't think the Panthers are worried about anything. I think the Panthers want to see the offense work. Yeah. I think they want to see that. Look, part of the problem Frank Reich had last year, I guess part of the problem the Panthers had last year, was that Frank Reich made it no secret he did not want Bryce Young as his quarterback, and he was not calling plays for Bryce Young. He was calling his offense. So the fact that you bring in somebody as forward-thinking as Dave Canales, and you go through a quarterback change in week 3, means you just got to make sure that there's proof of concept, right? You got to make sure that what you thought could work will work. I think if the Panthers are worried about anything, it would be up front, and can Chuba break? And look, Chuba has not broken like a big 20, 30-yard run. I think his longest on the season is 16. I think it is going to be a matter of, can Chuba keep getting enough yards to then force the Bears to pay attention to the run and give Andy Dalton those opportunities to make some of the throws we've seen. He was awesome against Las Vegas. He was a little bit less awesome against Cincinnati. I think they want to find that middle ground. They want to be able to get to the point where playing the Bears does not feel like, oh shit, we're going to lose to the Bears this week. Yeah. I mean, I don't think the Panthers are there yet. So when you ask me, what are they worried about? I think they're just worried about the Panthers right now because they have not earned the right not to be.
Yeah, and I get that. I feel like we actually were talking about that. Everybody that listens to Making Monsters knows I also work in Jacksonville. We had almost that exact conversation here in Jacksonville of like, how about we stop worrying about what other people are doing? Like, stop hoping the Titans lose and hoping the Colts lose, and you figure out your own stuff because you have your own football games that you need to win. And at some point, that is more important than hoping that someone else fails, And especially at the level that Jacksonville is, but I can get Carolina that too. They're just trying to kind of string some stuff together. And the Bears are in this world right now where they feel like they have a roster. You're just waiting for Caleb to be the Caleb that people told you. Like I said, each week has gotten better, and each week it's been a little bit different. The offense hasn't completely broke out, though. You've seen a game where Roma Dunze had an incredible game. You've seen DJ this last week get one in the end zone. Keenan just came back. He missed a couple weeks, so we'll see, healthy Keenan and what that looks like when they're all on the field together and healthy.
It's really, now granted, I am significantly older than you at 43, but it's really weird to think about the Bears with a receiving core.
I
believe your two teams, what you guys drafted, Dunze in Chicago and Brian Thomas Jr. in Jacksonville, were the two guys that I thought Carolina should trade up for if the opportunity was there. I work with somebody all the time that will pine both I think physical attractive wise and also just because her life went to shit around the time that DJ Moore left the Carolina Panthers. I work with someone that pines for him to come back
I get it.
all the time. So it's really weird that both of those guys ended up in the same place, and that place being Chicago of all places, who,
Believe
I don't know.
It's crazy because we've had the quarterback conversation so many times, and people will post the graphic like never had 4,000 passing yards, never had 30 touchdowns. And I'm like, let's also just talk about the fact that we've never had, maybe Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey, but we had them together for like 2 years. So it's like, There was never anything beyond that. So no wonder also any quarterback that we had couldn't succeed, because we were having wide receivers that either didn't work out, or we had unfortunate ones like a Knox, but you had, or a Kevin White that just ended up, he was supposed to be something. And it's all these like almost but nevers,
Yeah, sure.
And that's what's depressing. And so it does finally feel like with DJ Moore, we're obsessed with DJ Moore here. So again, thank you, Carolina Panthers. But I think that adding Keenan Allen was just kind of that cherry on top when it came to being able to help develop Rome. And that's what's most exciting for me, because Keenan's been in this league for so long, and I think he's really good at being able to kind of help these young guys and mold them into the players that they can be. And so people kind of thought it was crazy that we drafted Rome. They're like, you already have DJ and you already have Keenan and I'm like, Keenan's in year 14. Like this is like the most temporary solution.
That's one of the things that I think was really frustrating for me last year with Adam Thielen ended up being the alpha receiver here. And you draft Mingo, and look, I'm an SEC guy. I know what Mingo did really well at Ole Miss and was really excited about it. I think sometimes like Keenan with a Dunze is really interesting because it is a skill match, right? Yeah. Thielen and Mingo don't play receiver the same way at all. And that doesn't mean that Jonathan Mingo couldn't learn anything from Adam Thielen, but you have a coaching staff that is talking to Mingo about trying to accomplish something completely different than they were with Adam Thielen. I think the Bears are set up really well to make sure their young guys, their young skill position guys succeed.
Finally, thank you, Ryan Poles. I love Ryan Poles. He's pretty much saved this organization, at least for the time being. But final one before I let you go, what is your expectations for this week, and what does this game look like in your opinion?
I think that it's weird, right? Because quote unquote sloppy games or ugly games in the NFL don't look like they used to. Like this game could be both teams playing really poorly and it ending 35-31. I think that this is a game that is probably going to be really close, as the Bears are trying to put something together for the long term, and the Panthers are really focused on just let's make the improvements we can from week to week. I still think the Bears are going to win. I will never bet money on the Panthers ever again. But I think the Bears will win. I don't think this will be like a comfortable victory, though. Let's say somewhere in the range of like 27-24 Chicago.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I've ever had, I'll be at the game this weekend. I'll be at Soldier Field. I don't think I've ever been there at a comfortable game. Every game I've ever attended at Soldier Field has been like a nail biter, finals, seconds.
You were at the like absolute downpour against San Francisco a couple of years ago.
Yeah, right? I was at that one where it was just like mud slides everywhere. I was also at the 2013 Bears Packers final game of the season, deciding who won the NFC North. Aaron Rodgers to Randall Cobb in the final 50 seconds of the game for the Packers to beat the Bears to win the NFC North. I was at that one. So like every one I've been to has been just like nail biters. And I'm like, I would love a comfortable win to where like at the fourth quarter, I'm like, we're good, but I'm not expecting it either.
So let me ask you this, and this will be a good place to end, because one of the things that is interesting about our respective teams is the difference in competition, right? Mm-hmm. Like, the Panthers kind of became this hot pick as everybody's dark horse playoff team, and it was all built on the idea that like, well, somebody's got to win that division, right? Somebody's got to win the NFC South. Whereas, like, as the Bears, they could make real strides, and it could be really hard to make progress inside the NFC North.
Yeah, and that's what I think the NFC North at this time you can kind of point to being the better, like one of the best divisions from top to bottom in the NFL, because obviously the Vikings are kind of surprising everyone with Sam Darnold. I agree with you on the fact that I'm not totally convinced that this is the Sam Darnold that we're going
Justin
to get
Jefferson
forever.
is going to make every quarterback look a lot better than he really is.
Yeah, and then the Lions, I mean, Jared Goff just had a perfect game. You're seeing Jordan Love, he's coming back, and even though maybe it looked shaky in the second half, you were able to see what he could do later. And then, the Bears, like you said, the perfect wording of that is like they're building something for the future. So we're not having to have this like instant product right now, but you're 2-2 right now, and you're looking kind of ahead at some of these teams, and it looks like a lot of teams that you could beat. I mean, you got the Jags in London in a few weeks, and the Jags are kind of a hot mess right now. Honestly, you're looking at the Panthers next week or this weekend. And so there's a lot of winnable games. So I think most people are looking like the Bears can win 9 games, but that 9 games is not you're in the playoffs. And the interesting thing will be, 3 teams from the NFC North go to the postseason? Because when you look at the rest of the NFC, there's a lot of shakiness happening right now.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I guess you could see that same argument in the West, but like, convince me that more than one team out of the East or the South are going to make it. I don't think you could.
No. All right, Demetri. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And always good talking to you.
Yep, you as well. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Have a good one.